I'm American by birth and Dutch by choice, and today we are talking about 10 American habits that I can't quite shake, no matter how long I live in the Netherlands. I've been here for 22 years, and these habits are still very much a part of who I am and how I am. I want to thank Donald van Berkom, who is a Dutch man who lives in Arizona. He's the one who suggested this idea for a video, so thank you, Donald. And without further ado, let's get started. The first habit that I just can't seem to shake is my American accent. I mean, just listen to how I say gezelligheid. I'm sure for the Dutch that is heavily accented. To my ear, it seems perfectly reasonable, but what do I know? I'm inside the accent. I find it interesting that when I was studying abroad, many of my classmates felt that my accent was Southern, and they were convinced that I had a Southern accent. For what it's worth, the state where I grew up, Maryland, is south of the famous Mason-Dixon line. If you don't already know, the Mason-Dixon line is just a border that was created back in the late 1700s to settle a land dispute between the states of Pennsylvania and Maryland. But later, that dividing line was often referenced during the Civil War in terms of distinguishing between the slave states down south of the Mason-Dixon line, and those north, which were free states. So yeah, the accent, I'm afraid, is here to stay. The second habit that I can't quite shake, it's related to the first, is that I continue to speak English for the most part in my day-to-day activities, especially because I work for a Dutch company where the official language is English. And more specifically, I am there to edit English language documents for an academic journal. So my work involves English. And although I am married to a Dutch citizen, he is not Dutch by birth. He's Mexican by birth. So we don't speak Dutch at home. So most of the time in my day-to-day life, I am speaking English. And yeah, my English is improving, I will say. So I'm sure with a few more years, I will have perfected that skill. The third American habit that I can't shake is my sense of optimism, my can-do attitude. And I know that I have had a response from European colleagues. One of my colleagues is from France, Italy, both, and another one is from Poland. And I know that the two of them find me overly optimistic, perhaps. I don't know. But I do attribute that to that American sensibility of all things are possible. And I like to believe that all things, or most things, are possible. So that sense of optimism is something that even after 22 years of bad weather, for example, and certain other limitations, I have not shaken. And I don't intend to. So keep the happy face and keep soldiering on with a sense of optimism and possibility. The fourth American habit that I can't seem to shake, even after all of these years, is this capitalist approach. I'm not a super consumer by any means, but I am indeed, I do have an entrepreneurial spirit, and I am someone who has always enjoyed real estate and investing in real estate. And I, in fact, had a real estate license when I was 18 years old. And for a very brief period, I sold real estate. And I remember approaching my boss at the time because I wanted to take a real estate investment course. At a very, again, young age, I was 18 years old. I looked like I was 12. And I took this investment course because I was interested in investing in real estate. And so that carries on because as soon as I came to Haarlem, and once I realized I wanted to stay here in Haarlem and in the Netherlands more generally, I wanted to buy a piece of property because I felt and was convinced that it would be a sound investment. And ultimately, I did do that. I bought this very Benedenwoning that I'm in now, and it has been a sound investment. That was not enough for me because over time, naturally we had neighbors that lived above us in the bovenwoning. And I always said that should that bovenwoning become available, I felt like we should buy it because it would be a good investment. And well, I did approach, in fact, the owner of the bovenwoning at one point and just mentioned that, should she ever be interested in selling it, I would be interested in purchasing it. The day finally came, she reached out to me and said, in fact, she was interested in selling it, and we bought it. So now we have both the benedenwoning and the bovenwoning. And we live for the most part in the bovenwoning, and I use this benedenwoning as a studio and as a guest house. Something I read some time ago that I'm curious about is that there are some Dutch people, empty nesters, I suppose, that live in, say, larger houses, maybe a 2 or 3 bedroom home that was occupied by themselves and their children, and when their children leave and they are in an empty nest, so to speak, that they have a kind of sense of guilt about it, that they feel like they should downsize and free up that property for a family. So that kind of thinking, I have to say, is quite foreign to me. And secondly, I do remember when a colleague of mine, a Dutch woman, her mother passed away and she inherited the home, and of course it was fully furnished. And I suggested to her that she could rent that property out, particularly to the expat market, because I felt like, well, hey, it's already furnished and there is an opportunity there. And I was struck by the fact that my Dutch colleague said, oh, no, she would just feel guilty about doing that, which again was so alien to me, because in my mind, she shouldn't feel guilty because she's actually providing a home to someone. And if she were to collect rent for doing so, it just seems reasonable. But all this is to say that I have really, I guess, not shaken some of that capitalist tendency and that desire to invest in real estate. The 5th habit that I can't seem to shake is my affinity for American music and American movies and American television. And it doesn't seem to matter how many years that I'm here in the Netherlands. And although I have an appreciation for some Dutch music, as I've discussed in previous videos, and I'm learning so much more about Dutch music thanks to my viewers who are Dutch and who have suggested many great singers and songs, which I really, really enjoy because I have a wide interest in music of all kinds. Nevertheless, I really do tend to listen to American music, and I go to the movies, and generally speaking, it's for American films, although I also enjoy Dutch films, but predominantly I would say they're American films. Maybe that's because that's what's mostly available, and the same with television shows. There are occasional Dutch shows that I watch, but predominantly I'm still watching American TV, which is so readily available here on Dutch television. So American media as a whole is something that I still consume and a habit that I haven't broken in the 22 years that I've been here. The 6th habit that I haven't shaken, and this is to a much lesser extent, but is my interest in American politics or my involvement in American politics. I still have the right to vote, and I do so, and I did in every election since I've lived here in the Netherlands. And sadly, I really got too emotionally involved in the last few elections and was, disappointed in those results. I did my part, and that's all I can do. But it is still something that I tend to follow. The 7th American habit, I guess you could say, that I haven't shaken is American clothing. For the most part, I still wear American clothing. And really, that's more to do with the size than anything else, because it is virtually impossible for me to find anything off the rack here in the Netherlands because the Dutch are so tall and their torsos are so long that, yeah, the sleeve lengths and everything, without getting things extensively altered, it's just not going to work for me. Nevertheless, I'm a big fan of t-shirts from We. I really like them. But yeah, my socks are from Paul Smith. My shoes, even though I have bought a couple of brands of Dutch shoes and I like them, my favorite shoe is Camper from Spain. And yeah, in terms of jeans, definitely Levi's all the way. Levi's fit me perfectly. And frankly, I usually just wait until I'm back in the States and I stock up all my Levi's and my trousers and my underwear and my shirts and sweaters and jackets and all of that. The eighth habit, and yeah, I'm a little bit embarrassed by this one, I guess, but I can't seem to shake it, is that I still tend to eat very quickly. I kind of do everything very quickly, so I guess that just plays out in terms of how I eat as well. And I know that Europeans, including the Dutch, tend to savor their meals, and if they go out to a restaurant, for example, it's a special moment, and they enjoy that moment, and they take their time. And I try, and I do enjoy the moment, don't get me wrong, but I tend to kind of get into the restaurant. I'm pretty much ready to order and have a sense of what I would like to eat, and then I consume that meal and ready for the check and ready to hit the road, you know. So that's a kind of a bad habit, and I wish I could make some headway on that regard. But yeah, it's just another American habit that I can't seem to shake. The ninth American habit or tendency that I can't seem to shake is my need for more space. In terms of personal space, it's something I seem to have a need for, and I'm very conscious of that when I'm in the grocery store. And I've talked about this before. For instance, countless times there will be someone behind me in the line, for example, and just kind of, nudging and bumping. And I've been elsewhere, and I don't know, the Dutch, their sense of space is different. It's a very densely populated country, so maybe that's why, or maybe it's just cultural, but they do tend to kind of come in quite closely when they speak to you, and they are more accustomed to being kind of snuggly and cozy, I suppose. And for not only just me, but for Americans in general, we're accustomed to more personal space around us, and we have a sensitivity to that and an awareness of that when people kind of are encroaching on that personal space. And again, yeah, maybe that has something to do with the scale and the size of that country. There's so much more space there that each person can occupy more space. I don't know, but that's just a habit that I can't shake. And number 10 on my list, last but not least, it's a habit that I can't break, and that's being polite. And sometimes that means beating around the bush, and I've definitely made some headway in that regard, and I do my best to be more direct, but I've never been able to become so direct that I'm going to express my opinion when it hasn't been asked for. That I don't get. If it's a positive opinion, I suppose, but, I'm not likely to sort of volunteer that I don't like somebody's haircut, or I don't think they should be wearing a hat inside their own house, for example. That's not something I feel the need to say. So I tend to be really more polite all the time, I think, and in ways that maybe are not always so necessary. I know I have a tendency to apologize, for example. Oh, I'm sorry, when there's no need for me to apologize. And that's just a level of maybe American politeness that I could afford to shed, but that's just another American habit that is firmly entrenched. And no matter how many years I've been here, I still can't shake it. So there you have it. Those are 10 American traits, characteristics, habits that I have not been able to shake in all my years living here. I am who I am, and I guess, as they say, you can take the man out of America, but you can't take the American out of the man. Maybe there's some truth in that. I mean, I do feel like I have adapted in so many ways, and I made a video about that in terms of how I have become Dutchified in many ways, thankfully. So it's not black or white, but just for the sake of balance, I thought I would share with you some of the ways in which I am still American. So thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate all of your views and your comments. Keep them coming, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Tot ziens!